Let's take a look at the new Retevis Ailunce HA1UV dual band ham HT. I had the chance to review the Ailunce HA1G GMRS radio a few months ago. I really liked that radio and told my Retevis contact that I thought the HA1G form factor and feature set would make a great ham radio too. They said, "Funny, you should mention that, as we've got the ham version in final testing and we'd like to send you one when they're ready." That new radio is the Ailunce HA1UV, and it showed up in the mail a couple of weeks ago, and I've been playing with it since then. Retevis provided the radio, but doesn't have input into the review. If you're familiar with the HA1G, then you're already familiar with the HA1UV. Besides the same form factor, the HA1UV has nearly the same feature set and menu structure as the HA1G. In fact, I went through the menus side by side and didn't notice any big differences. Obviously, the HA1G transmits only on GMRS channels, but other than that, things are pretty much identical. Here are a couple of key features I find particularly cool. First, the HA1UV has an IP67 ingress protection score. That means it's dustproof and submersible in up to a meter of water for 30 minutes. This makes the radio a great choice for outdoor use. You don't have to worry about wet weather or dropping it into fairly shallow water. Next, it has a 2800 milliamp hour battery. This gives the HA1UV plenty of juice. I haven't just turned it on and left it sit, but I'd expect many hours of receive-only time. With 260 channels and lots of user-definable memory zones, you can really customize the radio for how you want to use it. You can set up zones for different areas where you do business or visit family, set up zones for different uses or functions, or any other purpose that meets your needs. For me, radios with hundreds of channels are cool, but who wants to scroll through thousands of channels to find what you're looking for? Zones solve that problem. I also like the layout of the color screen. Like the HA1G, the HA1UV has a blue and white background with large, easy-to-read fonts. A blue background represents the active channel and a white shows the secondary channel. You can also program a side key as a secondary PTT button, allowing you to respond to whatever channel was transmitting without changing the active channel on the display. The display has brightness controls and big fonts, making it easier to see in bright sunlight than some of the others out there. Last for this short list is how the HA1UV displays information when receiving and transmitting. When a signal is received, a large dialog box opens up with a green background that displays the frequency and CT/CSS or DCS code if one is present. When transmitting, the dialog box is red and it displays the same info. Hey, if you like video reviews like this one, please subscribe to the Gadget Talk channel and click the thumbs up button below the video. Feel free to add helpful comments as well. Likes and comments help show YouTube that folks value the content and tells them to offer it to others. Also, please click the Join button if you'd like to learn more about becoming a channel member, or you can click the Thanks button to make a one-time contribution to show your support. I really appreciate it. Now, back to the review. Let's head over to the table and see what comes in the box. So this is the box that the radio comes in. Let's take a look and see what is inside. Now, there are two ways to charge the radio. It comes with this USB-C, which has got a green insert, which I think means quick charge on one of the standards, but it's USB-C on one end, USB-A on the other, and you have the choice of plugging this into a power supply of some type, wall wart, your computer, whatever, and then plugging the USB-C either into the back of the battery in the radio itself, or you can plug it into the back of this charge cradle if you prefer using a charge cradle for some desktop charging. So those are our charging options for the radio. Typical accessories for little radios like this are a belt clip. In this case, the screws are in the back of the radio, so the belt clip comes without a pouch, and then a lanyard or a wrist strap for those of you who like a little more security when holding the radio. And then we've got a typical rubber ducky style antenna. It's pretty hefty. It's not terribly flexible, but it's well protected. And so if we look at the bottom, we see that the male side is in the antenna. So if you're thinking about a third-party antenna, you're going to want one with the male side. That's a little different than some of the other radios that are on the market, so keep that in mind. Of course, it comes with an owner's manual, and there's not a lot to it. This radio operates like most of the radios, but it'll give you a description of what comes in the box, what the various icons mean on the screen, where the buttons are, what they do, as well as some of the menu items here in the back, along with some specifications. So it's pretty typical of what these little owner's manuals are. And then it comes with a programming cable. And the programming cable is pretty typical. It has the USB-A on this side, but it's different on this side. And it comes with a Motorola style connector, and that's because of the high ingress protection score that this radio has. And so instead of just flipping down the cover and plugging a K1 in there, we're going to unscrew the cover, and then we're going to rescrew this in, and these little contacts are going to make contact on the side of the radio to allow you to do your programming that way, because this type of an installation is much easier to keep the water protection score high. Keep in mind, if you're planning to use a speaker microphone, you're going to have to get this kind of connector on your speaker microphone as well. Now, let's do a quick power off tour. So let's go through the radio with the power off. See, the speaker is behind the grill here. We've got a microphone. We've got the screen. We don't have a lot of extra buttons, and so some of these buttons are going to do double duty. But we've got a menu and exit, but we don't have an A/B switch, and we don't have a VFO and memory switch here, and that's going to be accomplished with other buttons. We also see that the keys here on the front are labeled with the numbers and then with menu shortcuts. So a menu and 2 will get you to the transmitter power, or a menu and 4 would get you to the step adjustment. So that's what's on the front. On the side, we've got the push to talk. We've got push to side key 1, side key 2. On the back, we've got the screws in the radio for the belt clip that I just showed you. So we take these out to mount the belt clip, and the belt clip mounts to the radio itself, not to the battery. Here's the battery. We've got the USB-C down here to connect to charge it, and then a little charging indicator LED right there. Now the battery comes off with a little spring clip right here, and so it just slides off when you activate that little clip. And then on this side, we've got the connector for the speaker mic or for the programming cable, and as you can see, it's got a big hefty screw here to make sure that stays nice and tight to maintain that ingress protection score. On the top of the radio, one of the things that I like about this radio is it's got a ratcheted switch to allow you to easily turn channels, and if you use this in cold weather, if you have gloves on, that kind of thing, this makes using the radio much easier than trying to either use the up or down key or typing in channels, which of course you can do, but I just like that extra knob up there. The on-off switch is over here, and then the SMA for the radio is here. And again, note the female side here, the socket side is on this side. So again, if you're thinking about a third-party antenna, you'll need to make sure that you get the right one. And then the top key here, which I'll expect to have some programmability. Then here is the LED that shows when you're receiving or when you're transmitting. So that's a quick tour of the radio on the outside. Now let's turn on the radio and explore the buttons and menus. So let's do a power on tour of the HA1UV. We'll turn the power on. And it comes up and you see it's got 2 display windows, the upper register, the lower register as I call them. And it's got the typical kinds of information here. So it's the all scan group, it's channel 3, it's high power, wideband, and as we saw, the rest of the indicators there are listed in the owner's manual. In the lower register, I've got that one set as VFO mode, so I've got just a 440 frequency programmed in there, and it's medium power and wide bandwidth as well. Now to change which of these the push to talk works, we're just going to hit scan, and it goes up to channel 3, and then I can change channel 3 using the up and down buttons, or I can change channel 3, channel 1, and so forth using the rotary knob here at the top. A long press on the exit key will turn that top register into VFO mode or VFO1. Entering the menus is just a menu press here. And you can see that this radio has the menus divided into various categories. So the radio menus are going to cover the things that apply to the radio, such as the display mode, the band setting, backlight, and so forth. We'll exit out of there. We can go down to zone. We can set zones up, which is really handy, which allows you, if you're going to put a bunch of channels into your radio, assign them to zones based on geography or function or whatever makes sense to you. When we go down to channel, this is interesting. I like this because we can go into our channels and then we can access things. So like right now, if we go to channel 1 and enter, we can go in and we can make the programming. And so if we're going to go to add a channel, we'd go down to that choice, but we can add the channel alias, the name, the bandwidth frequency, transmit frequency, CT, CSS codes. All of that is here in one place, which makes programming a channel into your radio really easy as opposed to scrolling through a bunch of disjointed menus in a long menu list. So that's, I think, really handy. Here's our scan menu. I only have one scan group defined, and so we can put the radio channels into that, and we can add groups as we desire. Then down here in signaling, that gets into the DTMF stuff. I usually don't mess around with that very much. In the emergency, we can put in call tones, again, DTMF, putting in call tones to identify who you are into another radio user. Again, not terribly useful in ham radio. The FM radio, we can program in FM radio stations or scan the normal FM band, so that's handy. And we go down here to weather, and then the weather has an interesting function, I think, and that is you can set a weather alarm. Now, the NOAA will broadcast a subaudible alarm when there's a storm warning or some other alert that they're putting out, and if you have the alarm on, the radio, regardless of whether you have the weather channel selected, will beep to give you an indication that there is a weather event happening that you should be aware of. And then, of course, you can just look at your NOAA channel list. We go down here and select it. Channel 1 is what's active here in the Phoenix area.
PM, Mountain Standard Time. Here is the new Mountain Standard Time observation for Phoenix on Thursday, February 6th.
And so we can see that we have that available to us as well. And so we've got a lot of cool things here in the menu system, and having them grouped together like this makes this a really handy way to use the radio. So long press here, for example, on squelch, takes you directly to the squelch setting. You can make the change, press menu, and then it'll go back. If you wanted to set a CT CSS tone, for example, you do a long press on tone, and then that comes in, and you can make the choices there. So these are 9 of the menu items that you can get with a long press without going through the menu system itself. So that's a quick power on tour of the front plate. Let's take a look at the side keys. Obviously, we've got the push to talk, the side key number 1 moves us into breaking the squelch and monitoring that. A long press changes the power. Notice it changed from medium. Now it's high, so that's a really handy function. You don't have to go through menus to change power. And then the side key number 2, a long press, turns the scan on, and I don't have scan set, so it provided an error. A short press on side key 2 brings us into the FM radio. So you see that little radio icon come, and then we can make, choices here with the FM active. That's a quick look here at the power on aspects of the radio, and it's really pretty cool. You can see it fits in my hand very well. It's a full-size HT radio, so it's got room for the extra knob. We've got the little push button here up on the top that I suspect has some programmability, and we'll have to check on that as we look at the menus in more detail as I play with the radio. And so that's our power on tour. If you've seen any of my other radio reviews, you'll remember that I really appreciate radios that have a clean signal. The HA1UV is the definition of clean. Let's take a look. So one of the things I'm always interested in is whether the output of these radios is clean. And you would expect it for radios in the next price point up, better than these budget class radios. And the H1UV is certainly a step above the budget class radios. So I've got my Tiny SA Ultra set up here. I'm measuring harmonics. The little blue line represents a level of harmonics or less. And so that we've got that specified here. Requirement for radios 5 watts and below, and then below 225, 250 or so megahertz, is that the harmonics be at least 40 dB below the primary. So that's what we'll be looking for. Our harmonics, hopefully not any, but below 40 dB from the primary frequency, which is 146.52. And then any that might exist need to be below that blue line. So let's press to talk. I've got 40 decibels here of external attenuation to avoid damaging the device, and then I'll be transmitting on high power. So let's take a look and see what we've got. I'm going to let the thing cycle through its frequencies a little to allow it to stabilize. And this is the definition of a clean radio right here. We've got the main frequency coming in, and it's at 5.1 dBm. That number really doesn't matter. It's the primary. And then as we look across, there are simply no other harmonics. And so this is the kind of response you would expect from really expensive radio. So to have this at a moderately priced HT is really, really good. For many of you, power output is an important variable. Here's what you can expect from your HA1UV. So let's take a look at the power output of this new HA1UV. I've got it connected to my MFJ874 power meter. I've got it on the 20 watt output, so we're going to be reading this on the second arc from the bottom. Now it's a 5 watt radio, so we're hoping to see, at least 5 watts on this little guy. I've got it set to forward, and we're transmitting into a dummy load. So let's take a look here in the 2 meter area on high power and see what kind of power we get. So it looks like right at 5 watts, which is good. That's what it's advertised for. And for a radio that's in kind of that next price tier up from the little budget class radios, that's what you'd expect. So here's 70 centimeters on high. 3.9, 4 watts, that's pretty good. So those are the power outputs for the HA1UV. I did some audio tests with the radio in my backyard. Here's what the radio sounds like. There's some neighborhood noise in this clip, so think of it as a real-world example.
Test, 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 1, 2, 3, test, test, receive test on the HA1UV, test, test, test. Test, 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 transmit test on the HA1UV, test, 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 transmit test, test out.
Here are a couple of screenshots and clips from the Retevis CPS. This CPS has a new layout and style elements. It also lists several other Retevis models, so it should work with several Retevis and Ailunce radios. I'll do a separate video for those of you who want to dive deeper into the CPS. So here are a couple of closing comments after working with the HA1UV for a couple of weeks. I really like the form factor of this radio. I particularly like the high ingress protection score and the ratcheted knob on the top. This is what I'd call a standard size HT, and it has a nice solid feel to it. I also like the screen and pop-up windows describing various functions, such as reading and writing to the CPS, and of course, the large, colorful transmit and receive windows. The memory zones make this particularly useful for those who travel a lot or for preppers who demand a radio with lots of channels for monitoring a variety of VHF or UHF frequencies. Memory zones and the similar scan groups allow you to narrow your choice of frequencies for a particular location or function. With a little forethought, you can easily program the HA1UV's channels into subdivisions for much easier memory management. FM broadcast mode and NOAA weather channels round out the basic communications needs many will have during inclement weather or other off-grid situations. If you found this video helpful, please click the thumbs up button and subscribe to the channel. Join me over here for my review of the HA1G GMRS HT. It might be the perfect companion to the HA1UV. Thanks for watching, and 73.